Welcome to Intersect, a podcast where we find connection in each other's story. This past weekend, during our worship services in the lobby here at Collegedale, I bumped into an old friend, Ruth Renzinger. Ruth and I first connected a few years ago when her and her family were going through a season of loss. And Ruth had a friend with her this weekend, Gabriela. And as we were interacting, she was like, hey, you need to because I was mentioning how we're doing this podcast called Intersect, and she is standing slightly behind Gabriela, and she points at her like, you need to have her. And so at that point, I was like, okay, let's figure out how we can make it happen, because Gabriela was in town. She's not going to be here too much longer. And so, Ruth, tell us a little bit about how, as you guys put your phones on silent, tell us a little bit about how you connected with Gabriela.
So I had been out of state for a few months with a family emergency in the West Coast, and I was coming back into town for a few days, and I wanted to get an appointment with my doctor at LifeMed Clinic. And so I scheduled the appointment, and at the end, before hanging up, the person on the other line asked me, do you know of anyone who has a place for one of our volunteers to stay for free? I said, well, no, not really, but I'll keep it in mind. So I hung up, and as I'm thinking about it, I said, I wonder if that is me. Mm. And I had one of my housemates had just moved out, and I thought, I wonder, let me see. So I wasn't going to be here very long, and so I was able to connect with Gabriela, and she rode her bike over, and so she could meet my other housemates and neighbors, and it was an instant connection, and it was very clear that this was going to be a good fit, and it sure was.
Wow. So all of you listeners out there, this is not an invitation to see if you can be housemates with Ruth, but God does work in strange ways sometimes. And he may have a housemate for you somewhere. So anyway, okay, so you guys connect. And Gabriela, yes. you're from Argentina.
Yes, I'm from Argentina.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and so as I had mentioned, Ruth, when we met, had been in a season of loss, and one of the things that I learned just listening briefly and meeting Gabriela is she kind of has this beauty from ashes experience, and I don't want to steal her thunder, so to speak. So just got to let her share whatever she would feel comfortable sharing with us. But tell us about a little bit of your journey and your intersect with God, and how that's impacted the way you intersect with people.
Yes, thank you. Yes. First, my English is not the best. I'm a missionary. I learn English around the world, so I'll do my best to express a little bit about my own testimony. And God is so good. I grew up in a family in Argentina, Adventist home, and I grew up with 3 dreams. One, someday to have a good Christian partner, and second, to have children, and the third one was to be a missionary. Since I was 6 years old, I always dreamed to be a missionary. So that's why I choose my profession. I'm a dentist because of that, because I thought how to match a profession with the 3D dreams, and I saw that dentistry can be that profession that can allow me to be wife, mother, and missionary too. So that's why I chose.
Those were the 3 dreams: wife, mother, missionary.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And time passed, and I found myself one day with my heart broken after a divorce and without having any children. So in that point, Satan put like a dark cloth on upon my head, in my mind, all dark. It's like I couldn't see nothing good in my future. It's like I thought I lost everything. What I wanted is was not a reality. My dreams were broken, and I was in a very difficult time of depression. But God is so good. One day I was on my bed without, couldn't even move. I was really bad and I'm sad. And He put a little light in my head, in my mind. It was a reminder. I remember that, yes, I two dreams were not possible to fulfill, but still there is one that you can fulfill. You still have a tool that is your profession. So remember that you wanted from your childhood to be a missionary. You still can fulfill that dream. But I told God, how? I don't have any strength. I was devastated. So, in that moment, it was just a thought. Minutes later, a good friend of mine, called me. He didn't know what was happening to me. I was really bad, but he didn't know that in that moment I was so deep. So he told me, Gabby, we need a dentist next week to go to a little town that a lot of lack in dentistry. Could you prepare a group of dentists to go together? He is the director of all the lab technicians that were working for us in the Adventist hospital. I was working 20 years as a dentist in an Adventist hospital in my country, and he was the one that provides all things, crowns, things, dentures, and very mission-minded. So he invited me to do that, and I just told him yes because of what God put in my mind just a few minutes earlier. But after hang up, I told God, how? I can't move. I'm so bad, so depressed. But God gave me the strength, and little by little, making calls. Next week the team was ready for going for a mission trip, and that was the beginning of a healing process. Because I was feeling so self-pity in that moment, just thinking all my loss, and that is all done. So, but after that trip, I started doing a lot of other mission trips around my state, in my country, and just put my eyes on the need of others. Was what really helped me, to overcome that depression. I'm
So can I?
convinced that service is the
Yeah.
best antidepressant that can
Oh,
exist.
good. Service is like
Service.
an antidepressant. Okay. And what do you feel like? Because sometimes I think our, sometimes I think we can be so fixated about getting beyond something that all our time and attention is focused on whatever that thing is we're trying to get beyond.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
But when you were given this calling of God, where He plants this little seed in your mind and He says, hey, you still have dentistry. And then
Yes.
that thought is there. And then just all of a sudden your friend calls, hey, can you do this? What was it about that experience of healing being the byproduct of service? Why do you think, what is it about that you think works as you reflect on your own experience? Like how did it allow you to heal, might you say? And then I want to hear more of your service story, but what is it about that like taking the focus off of where your thoughts were consumed to, how would you say, why is that so significant?
That it was amazing how the part of the healing process was to accept that happiness can come from other sources, not only to have the beautiful family. In my thoughts, in my mind, I grew up with that idea because of how my mother taught me that, or I understood that happiness for a woman can be just if you are a wife and a mother. And so that was wrong. I discovered later that those were just Satan's lies, in my mind. So when I saw that there are other sources of happiness, and mainly God, is the service. He gave us a mission, and I think that is so amazing. It's good when you serve for others, it's good, but those that are serving, are the first blessed. So I discovered other sources of happiness.
So
just
it's almost
changing the focus.
Yes, so it's almost like we could end up making an idol
Exactly.
out of our ideals.
Exactly.
And that's when the ideal becomes a lie. It's not that being a mother is not a good thing. It's not that
very good
being a wife isn't a good thing. But when we experience a hardship, when we experience a twist in the road that might not be any fault of our own.
Exactly.
And then out of that loss, out of that disappointment, out of that deep despair, which I think I've never been through divorce, but I think I've heard it said that sometimes divorce is more painful than death because you're still living with the loss real time, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So
yes.
in God through service was saying, I want to be your God. And there's that passage in Isaiah, maybe we'll look at it a little bit. Your maker is your husband.
Yes.
And so it's almost like he's saying, you know what, I want to be,
Isaiah, yes.
I will be a husband to you, and you don't have to make an idol out of your ideal.
Exactly.
Because I still have an ideal design for you, even though the world that you thought you were living in has fallen apart.
Yes.
My commitment to you has not fallen apart.
Amen. As you said, the dreams in some way were my little gods. Those dreams were taking his place in my heart. And even I was about to tell you a little more about my journey of service. Even service can
become the idol.
Yes, and I'm going to share with you what happened to me.
Yes, please.
Because at the beginning, I just was serving in little trips, short trips around my place. But as much as I was feeling better and better, I started going farther and farther, other countries. And I received a call from Bolivia, at the north of Bolivia, an orphanage. Familia Feliz is the name of that orphanage. A lot of people from Southern, a lot of students are going there every year as volunteers. And so in that place, I found something very related with the lacks of my heart, almost around 100 children, and the love that I received from those children, that was amazing. I feel so useful there. I was able to be like a mom for them, a teacher, a musician, a cook, so many things, a doctor, but and I keep going back and forth from Bolivia to Argentina, like 6 years. And I recognized that was big part of my healing process, big part, because of the love of the volunteers, the children. That was very special. And God was very patient. until when he saw me healed enough, he called me to walk higher ways with him. How? A very good friend of mine, she saw me each time that I returned from Bolivia, I was shining, so happy coming from Bolivia. But being in Argentina and working in my routine as a dentist, I was not so brilliant and not so plenty, not so happy, not depressed anymore, I can tell you. I didn't have one more day of depression, and I'm talking about that was 12 years ago, almost 13 now. So it's working, service works amazing.
Yeah, wow.
But what I'm telling you, that she saw me different. In Bolivia, super happy. In Argentina, not so happy.
Okay.
And
she was with you in both locations?
And no, just she was my best friend and a neighbor. So she saw the difference when I came back after each mission trip.
Okay.
And when I was there working. And so what she pointed and helped me to see the difference, why I'm so happy there and not so happy in Argentina. It's like I realized really crying when I heard myself answering, telling her, I'm going there because that is what is giving me life. I feel alive there. So when I heard those words coming up from my mouth, I started crying because I realized that was something else instead of God. What was my source of happiness. So when I was not there with the children and what implies being in Bolivia, being a missionary, I was not so happy. So I started talking with God, crying with God like 1 week until I surrendered all. I surrendered Bolivia. I realized that I need time to look for God deeply, So I told God, okay, God, I'm going to stop going there. I want you to be the source of my happiness. Nothing else, nobody else. It was very difficult to open my hand and let it go.
Especially when it's something that brings you such great joy.
Exactly. But, because it can be tricky. That's why I told you, even service, so good thing, can be some another little God instead of God. This place, wonderful place, was taking his place in my heart.
I think that's a real gift that God gave you.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think people will pour themselves into that work, into that thing that brings them great joy.
Yes.
And they don't realize maybe that they've put it before God.
Yes.
Until they're at a stage of burnout, or until maybe they've burnt the bridges in some familial relationship or some other kind of relationship where, And so it's for God to help you discern that.
Exactly. I saw him calling me to a higher way, as I told you, and it was very difficult. And I'm learning in my life to walk on this earth with open hands. To don't close whatever he puts here. If he puts a person, take care of that, and until a job or whatever, even a place to do service. Nothing. I don't want nothing to take his place. What I decided, is to start being a missionary outside of my country. I quit my job after 20 years being a dentist in the Adventist hospital, something that was saved, every month, my money. Now I told God, I'm going to live literally what Matthew 6:33 says. Look first the kingdom of God, and He's going to take care of the rest. So I told God, okay, I'm going to follow you 100%. You choose where I have to go, because I was choosing to go just to that orphanage because of what I found it there, because of the lack of my hearts. But that was just like a patch. That was not filling my holes of my soul. That's why each time that I return to my country, the holes still there.
Still were there.
I realized He showed me that, and I wanted what that lady next to the wheel that I found the living water. That really satisfies. I wanted that. I wanted that experience in my life. So I told God, I'm going to start a journey with you. I want to have my own experiences as a missionary with you. You provide. I'm going to depend on you. So the two motivations were to develop more faith and start depending on Him.
Wholehearted
and nothing
dependence on Jesus.
Nothing else.
You mentioned, so you're a dentist.
Yes.
And before we launched the podcast, we were just doing a little get acquainted time. And you mentioned being drawn into ministry in the realm of addiction and whatnot. And, listening to you right now, I'm just thinking like, an old friend of mine, my conference president from years ago, he said a layman's definition of addiction is the way we medicate our pain.
Exactly.
And so, this idea that maybe our ideal can become a form of medication, or in your case,
You're right.
When your life departed from the ideal, then it's like you have a adverse reaction to that medication, or medicating with service of I love Bolivia, but now when I come home, it's like I'm off my medication, and or I'm having a hangover from Bolivia.
Yes.
And so
I was feeling a withdrawal, I realized that became like my drug. I needed to go back there to feel really happy, to be plenty, to satisfy my soul. No, it was another source of happiness instead of God, and it didn't last.
This idea that Jesus is saying, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly, is a complement to what Paul says when he says, I've learned the secret of having little and having much, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I sometimes think about that as I can endure all things, or I can even thrive in all things through Christ who gives me strength, because it's not premised on my circumstance. It's not premised on prosperity or adversity. It is truly coming to find joy in all things because our joy is Jesus.
Amen. Yes. Yes. I discovered that it was difficult to see because it's like you convince yourself that you are doing well, you are serving, so that's why it took 6 years until I saw that, that I was depending on being there to be happy.
Yeah.
So I started a new journey, looking for God, and with other areas that are not related with the lacks of my heart, So, for example, lifestyle medicine. I started visiting many lifestyle centers in Brazil, Colombia, Portugal, Spain, Romania. It took like 2 years traveling around those countries. Helping, learning, teaching. It was very special. But I was learning in those areas, but my main goal was to reach the point to be plenty, happy, filled with God and God alone, So I decided to start having my special time with God, significant time with the Bible and praying, my own time with God every morning very early, so I can start the day filled already, and keep my connection during the day. I was practicing that, and I can tell you, during those 2 years, finally I reached that point that no matter where and what I'm doing, where I am, what I'm doing, with whom I am, I'm happy. I'm plenty. I'm stable. My emotions always, my emotions were like up and down depending on what is happening in my life. Now is he is above all,
Yeah, Jesus
and
is my
he's
joy.
stable,
Yes.
and it's so good to live in that way.
So I wanna dig into a little bit about this thing that you described of communing with Jesus. But before I do, I just want to turn to Ruth for a minute. Ruth, as you've gotten to know Gabriela and know her story and experience a friendship together, and as you've listened to this conversation in this moment here, what has God done in you, or how have you found your own experience resonating, or I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, as has been pointed out, Gabrielle and I share some connections and bonds. And I guess the gift to me of Gabriela has been how she has brought her healing and shown the love, the unconditional love of Jesus into my life
Okay.
in ways that I haven't always experienced from people as competent and capable as her.
Oh, okay.
So
She is my friend.
is there something that you would feel comfortable being specific about as in terms of experiencing unconditional love from Gabrielle?
Well, Gabriela is just amazing in her capacity to do and be a whole bunch of different places.
Okay.
And without a car and without her own house. And, and she just is, when she was living with me, she was constantly going to people's homes, doing treatments, going to the clinic, meeting people at church. I mean, it was just a constant house sitting for people, she was here, 2 months? And I'm watching her be totally integrated with so many people. And she just exudes the love of Jesus. And there's just a warmth and an acceptance that you just feel from her. And without a lot of barriers of, I think, a judgment. And probably because she's traveled around the world and she's been with a lot of different kind of people, she has a large capacity for loving people where they're at.
Experiencing a friendship which is kind of a judgment-free zone, was super refreshing. And then maybe watching, I think about, as you were describing her, she doesn't have a car, she doesn't have this, she doesn't have this, but I'm watching her go all over the countryside. I'm thinking about Luke 10, where Jesus tells his disciples, go into a community. When you find a person of peace, stay with that person of peace. And then, don't really worry about what you're going to take with you, because I'm going to provide for you. So it's almost like maybe in witnessing the ways that God provides for Gabriela, it's been an affirmation of ways that he's provided for you, as well as assurance that he's going to provide for you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so then this thing about you felt drawn to go deeper with Jesus day by day, like to really
Day by day, yes.
press into him. Tell us about, because one of the things, and I don't always articulate this on the podcast, but I like to think that we experience prayer as communion and prayer as commission. So prayer as communion would be like, there's this one quote from a book called Steps to Christ that I love that says that Jesus lived his life between the mountain and the multitude. So on the mountain, he's alone communing with his Father. Among the multitude, he was, he says, I do nothing but what I see my Father doing. So he was on mission with his Father, right?
Yes.
And so prayer as commission is, God says, as you have communed with me, I want to make your life an answered prayer for the people you interface with. But then also, I'm going to give you sometimes opportunities to pray with them. And one of my favorite statements from a guy, Adrian Chatfield, that taught at Cambridge was, prayer makes disciples.
I like that.
So prayer is not merely what we do for people, but ideally it's what we get to do with people, not as I'm up here, you're down here, but we're both need Jesus and I'm just coming alongside you. So you've talked about some of those ministry experiences, but for a minute, what is that experience like for you when Jesus drew you deeper? If you could just pull back a little bit the curtain and let us see, what is your time with Jesus like, that time on the mountain?
Yes, it's like that. It's so good and it's essential for me. And I have to be careful because realizing what happened to me at the past when service was taking his place, I was from sunrise to sunset and more, just helping and working in service, and without having that special time with him, and even without taking care enough enough about myself, So now I have to be very careful that I realize that I need that time with him. So, because I continue being a missionary, I didn't change that. I'm going to be the rest of my life a missionary. But there are some places that they are in such a big need that they want all from you, and they require, they ask for more and more. They want the whole day to be working. I learn to create boundaries. I have to. I tell them, okay, I can't be working at the office and before 9 or 9:30 in the morning, because I need my time, a special time with God, early, maybe 4:30 in the morning. I'm with God, and I have I want to be sure to have enough time to fill my soul, so I can give my 100% the rest of the day. So I spend that special time in the mountain with God, and I do my exercise. I have time for do a very good breakfast. So when I go to the office, wherever I am, I'm filled already.
So if we have strength to serve, we must rest in his presence.
Exactly. Yes. It has to be balanced. Our time with God, our time to take care of ourselves, because it can be very demanding to be a missionary,
How would you characterize the difference, say, I mean, there was this time when there were these ideals, mother, wife, dentist. You got to where it was just the dentist. And how would you contrast your journey with Jesus in terms of what it looks like now when you commune with him now as to where you were at? And I don't think it's like he wasn't alive and well in your life back in that time of your ideals or in the time growing up. But what is your experience of communion with God like now in contrast to what it was at those times in your life?
Now he is feeling all. He is all for me. Spending time with him is more than enough, you know. In my heart, the only desire that I have today is to make his will. I always tell him every day, may your will to be done. I'm already happy with you. You are more than enough. Whatever you want from me, with me, whatever, you know. So today, I'm happy. I have joy. I have peace in my heart. I don't know what his plans are for the future. I never fulfill those dreams, and not yet. Maybe never. I don't know what his plans are for me. But having him, I have more than enough, you know. So I decided to go to continue with my life and not to keep looking at the past and being just sad because of the lacks or what I lost. No, I just, you know, I like that phrase that says, when life gives you lemons, make a lemonade, you know? So that's why I started preparing myself as a counselor in addictions and codependency, because I knew what is suffering in those areas with part of my past, with people in that situation. And so I did that. I love lifestyle medicine. I'm certified in lifestyle medicine. And so I continue growing and giving, God is giving me more tools to serve Him. The point is to serve Him, everything for Him, for His glory, for his honor. Something that I always suggest people, sometimes people ask me to share my experience as a missionary, and always I tell them, check your motivations, because a lot of children and young people, they tell me that they want to be missionaries too, as I am, but I encourage them to do it. Just check your motivations. What are you looking for when you want to be a missionary? Because there are wrong motivations to be a missionary and right motivations. What I found is when you reach that point that God is all in you, that you are already plenty filled. So you have that unconditional love, you have His love, you can go and give. You are not looking for anything. What happened to me, I was giving, but unconsciously, I was looking for something back, you know, that love of those children, that was like a feedback I was looking for. I was depending on that to be happy. It's so good when you really work in your relationship with God, and He is all for you. So recently I read a quotation from The Desire of Ages that says the law of the universe is to receive from Him to give, even the angels, you know, and He received it back through service and praises. It's like a cycle, and I love that when you really reach that point that He is all in you, that you are plenty, you are no matter where He calls you, it's okay, okay, God, and you have enough to always to give, you know. Something that I encourage my patients, I say, go to the bakery of heaven every day in the morning, fresh bread.
I love that.
Fill your soul
I can
and take
smell
enough.
it. Yes.
and take enough to share during the day, because a lot of people around you that are hungry,
Yes.
and thirsty to go to the fountain of living water every day.
Yeah, I think
And that
that's a
is my
good place to
encouragement.
wrap up today. And I think Martin Luther used to say that we're just beggars helping other beggars know where to find bread.
Okay, good.
And
Yes,
so,
I like that.
But in conclusion, Ruth, do you have a take? I usually like to do a cap and just say, what is our takeaway? As you've listened and we processed today together, what do you feel like is standing out as a takeaway?
Oh, that God is beautiful, and He really does make things beautiful out of ashes.
In Ruth's life, too, I see it. She's
Amen.
a beautiful lady. God is working in both of us. Yes.
And so today, as we conclude, my prayer for you would be that you would find that the beauty that God brings from your ashes is joy.
Yes.
And that joy you would find is the abiding presence of Christ, that He is your all, and that ideals would not be your idol, service would not be your idol, but Jesus would be your all.
Amen. Yes.
And then you would find that life is ideal through the ups and downs because He is with you.
Yes.
Go in His grace. May you intersect with heaven and earth for the glory of God.
Amen.
Blessings.
Amen.